Wait, did I just hear that right? Thousands of migrant children placed with strangers? No background checks, not even fingerprinted. And one address was literally a strip club. This is not just mismanagement, it's horrifying. Let's watch this.
All right, well, a new report showing a lack of oversight from the Biden administration when it came to placing unaccompanied migrant children with unvetted adults. Based on data provided by HHS's Office of Refugee Resettlement, from January 2021 to January 2025, the Senate Judiciary Committee found that almost 11,500 migrant children were placed with unvetted sponsors who were not their parent, not their legal guardian, were not fingerprinted, or did not receive a background check. And those 11,000 children weren't the only ones in potentially dangerous situations. The report goes on to say that during the same period, quote, the Biden-Harris administration did not conduct home studies for almost 80,000 migrant children under the age of 12, including 1,961 who were placed in households where a home study was recommended. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley called the findings appalling and saying this, quote, my oversight continues to expose disturbing evidence that the Biden-Harris administration turned a blind eye to tens of thousands of kids who needed proper supervision and care. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno, and joining us today, Molly Line, Fox News correspondent, Molly Hemingway, Fox News contributor and editor-in-chief of The Federalist, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Jeremy Hunt, former Army intelligence captain and Veterans on Duty chairman and attorney. All right, guys, lots to unpack here. It's a horrifying statistic to learn, Jeremy, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally unacceptable. You have 11,000 children who are with unvetted adults. There was one story where there was an address that had 42 kids at one address. And even Secretary Kennedy testified about this. He talked about how there was one individual kept coming back for more and more kids, like seemingly collecting these kids, and he would have different addresses every time. One of the addresses he used was to a strip club. Another address was to an empty lot with shipping containers there. I mean, so what was going on? And so I think, honestly, when you look at the story, this is more than just, oh, we made a mistake, or we should have, been a little bit more careful. No, this was reckless. Someone needs to be held accountable. Someone needs to go to jail for this. I mean, this is absolutely unacceptable. And now, of course, the legacy media won't talk about this, but ICE is actually doing rescue operations, rescuing a lot of these children who are with these unvetted adults. And so, but, we're not going to hear about that on other news networks, but that's a lot of work that's going in right now to get these children back to safety.
Well, this is absolutely horrifying. And the thing is, this is just the amount that are placed in those recklessly unvetted households. But this isn't even, these aren't even the statistics of what occurred there in the households registered to strip clubs with 45 other children in there. This is absolutely appalling.
Right. When President Biden opened up the border, and he did make a big show of it when he ran for office, he said he was going to open the border wide. People started coming immediately. It wasn't just about bringing in workers for low wages that also depressed the wages of legal Americans. It was about all this other stuff that happens, too. The crime that happens through human trafficking and drug trafficking is horrific. And people act like it's so loving to have an open border, even though we've seen just in some of the recent operations, you had the children working at a cannabis farm in California. You had the sex trafficking issue in Nebraska with certain illegal immigrant issues there, underage. These are real crimes with real victims. And so having an open border is not nice and friendly. It's actually a horrific humanitarian crisis as well.
So I want to get to Texas right now, Molly, because what we covered here, as we showed earlier and Garrett enlightened us on, these votes are coming into the second round, and then that will bring us maybe to the third round. Walk us through the implications here of this redistricting map potential.
Well, it's fascinating to see the eyes of the country looking at Texas. We think about gerrymandering. This is something that's been happening throughout U.S. history since the founding of the country, really. The word gerrymandering goes way back to Massachusetts, to an old Governor Eldridge Gerry. And this today is not unique to Texas. Gerrymandering, the redrawing of lines, happens very often. The challenge here, and what Democrats are pushing back against, is that they think that this is One, inspired by Trump, which I think is potentially why they've been set off to the degree that they have, and the effort to go to stop it, where Democrats fled briefly. They couldn't really stop this, and that's why we're watching the process continue forward, but went around the country, essentially going to friendly governors from blue states, arguing that they can turn this into really a nationwide issue and that blue states could try to counter this. So there's a lot going on nationally, making this far more than just something that affects Texas, the Texas voters, people that could be in these districts that may potentially be redrawn. The Democrats on the ground there in Texas are watching this in particular because they're arguing that they're going to lose seats, that ultimately this could result in Texas gaining up to 5 additional Republican House seats in the upcoming midterms. But this type of challenge goes on around the country, not just every 10 years. There are current challenges right now. The Brennan Center for Justice has been tracking this. There are a multitude of states that have lawsuits related to measures and redrawing. But this particular thing that's happening on the ground in Texas is fascinating. And we're just kind of midway through the ultimate process. The Republicans are likely to get their way here. That is the expected outcome of this, just merely because they do have the power on the ground there in Texas right now.
So, Lisa, Molly mentioned the courts and the lawsuits, and the Supreme Court has held that this is squarely within state courts to adjudicate. We know, obviously, there's some federal acts that apply, but the reality is that when you gerrymander based on partisanship, that is lawful. It's when it's done based on race or allegations of race, if proven, that makes it unconstitutional. Now, all of this is against the rubric that these Democrats, the reason the vote's today is because they weren't here earlier, right? And all of these guys fled to a blue-friendly state where a lot of Texans argued you are making a national spectacle at lawmakers that are now expressing their frustrations with this redistricting.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Molly's point, gerrymandering goes back to 1812 with Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts because he created a district that looked like a salamander. In New York, in 2024, they redistricted. It was a court order, but they did a mid-decade redistricting. Part of this for Texas is because millions of people have migrated there since the 2020 census. That's in a large part, you've got Governor Gavin Newsom to blame because a lot of those people came from the state of California because of his poor leadership there. But also, I interviewed Hans von Spakovsky. He's a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. And he told me this, which I think a lot of people are missing in this overall conversation, that in early July, the U.S. Justice Department sent a letter to Texas warning them that 4 of the congressional districts they had put together in 2021 were unconstitutional racial gerrymandering. That stemmed from a decision at the end of last year under the prior administration from the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. So it was a court decision that sort of spurred the changes that needed to take place in the state of Texas. So I think that part of it has also been misrepresented by the media, which is not shocking.
And I think a big reason why you're seeing so much Democrat outrage over redistricting right now is because, just frankly, although both parties have done a lot of redistricting in various states, Democrats have done a much better job to maximize their votes. In Illinois, they have basically made it impossible to be elected as a Republican. In Massachusetts, there are no elected Republicans, even though close to 40% of the state voted for Donald Trump last year. So Democrats have kind of done as much as is possible to do with redistricting, whereas Republicans actually could do much more. So they're making this a big issue because they're freaking out about how many more seats could be obtained if other states did what Texas is doing as well, whereas they don't really have much room to operate to increase their congressional districts.
And Jeremy, that was exactly the argument by some Republicans when, for example, Governor Gavin Newsom joined in the fray and said, we're going to fight fire with fire. And Republicans were sort of like, you already have. That's the whole point. You've been cheating this entire time. And now we are doing it. GOP is doing it lawfully, not cheating. And the Democrats are having a meltdown.
This is one of the most disturbing things I have ever heard in a long time. Think about it. Nearly 11,500 kids handed over to random adults with zero check. This is not just sloppy. This is dangerous. And the fact that almost 80,000 under 12 children didn't even get a home study. Imagine being a parent and learning your child was placed with a total stranger. The government never vetted. That's beyond reckless. Okay, stop right there. 42 kids at one address. A strip club? An empty lot. That's not incompetence. That's straight up child endangerment. At what point does this go from bad oversight to criminal negligence? Because if you or I left one child in danger, we are being jailed. Yet here we are talking about 10 of thousands. And what makes this worse? The media barely touch it. Watch this. If the roles were reversed, if this happened under Trump, it would be 24/7 breaking news. But under Biden, silence. The double standard is exactly why people don't trust mainstream coverage anymore. Here is where it gets political. Redistricting happens every 10 years, but in Texas, it turned into all out war. Democrats are streaming rigged maps. Republicans are saying this is legal, deal with it. And the irony, both sides have been doing it for decades. Exactly. This isn't some brand new Republican trick. Democrats have been masters at this game. Illinois is the perfect example. Almost half the state voters red, but Republicans can't even compete because of how the maps are drawn. But here's the kicker, Democrats may have overplayed their land. That's the game changer. People are leaving California and New York in droves and move to Texas, Florida, Georgia. That's population shifts mean more Republican seats, and Democrats know it. So when they call it cheating, really, what they are worried about is losing control. This isn't just about taxes. The way these maps are drawn could decide who controls Congress for the next decade. So here's the bigger question. Do you think gerrymandering is just politics as usual, or is it cheating democracy? Drop your take in comments. I want to see where you stand because this fight is only getting started.